Hi, Justin here from Kombative Edge Martial Arts. I'm in my Floral Park school. We're going to do the filming from the Floral Park school. And so we're going to talk about the next step in this business adventure that we're discussing. So we're at the park. Okay, we're at the park. We talked about what? We talked about you gotta have good character, right? You gotta have trust. You gotta have relationship with your students that you wanna build up with, right? And and again, what we're doing is we're understanding that we're starting with our power base, right? Start talking to people, start getting out that information, talk about what you're doing, talk about, where you're doing it, the whole 9 yards. And this stage is not about the money, okay? The stage is about getting your presence known. And it's very important to get your presence known because you don't want to jump into a school or a storefront and nobody knows that you're there. They don't know who you are, the whole 9 yards. So spend the time to build a presence. Spend the time to understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? So we're talking to our friends, we're talking to co-workers, we're getting people to come on in. And we are now trying to build a small base, okay? We talked about what? Well, at that time, I was only charging $125 a month. And it was, again, it's not about the money, it's about getting that exposure. It is cheap enough for people to be like, all right, it's $125, I'll check it out. Because nobody's gonna pay an astronomical amount of money for your time when you don't have anything, okay? People will judge a book by its cover, right? They do it all the time. You do it. I've done it. People have done it. And we got to remember not to judge a book by its cover. But at the same time, though, why would I pay a person $200, $150, $180 to go to a park when I can spend that same amount of money and go to a martial art school or a place that has what? A facility, right? So you have to keep that in mind when you're doing this, right? Because what are we doing? We're going from the shirt off the back to 2 schools in that journey, right? That's the journey I took. All right, so now we're at the park. We've been there all summer long. Base is growing. Now we have our first pickle. What's our first pickle? Well, summer's coming to an end. It'll start getting cold. Unless you want to train out the snow, you gotta find a place. Now, what are places that you can find? What are places that you can look for? Anything where the rent is cheap, So churches, maybe a school gym, right? Maybe a daycare facility that may have a space that you can use. Like anything that is, any place that has a space. Now, for me, I did a lot of churches, right? I was looking for church, because church is a great place because they usually are very accepting in the sense of they'll let you use it as long as you don't damage anything that they have, and they usually ask for a small donation of some kind, and it's something that you can always you can always work a price out with them based on what you're doing. Okay, so this is something that's very, very important to understand. So you got to start searching, and that's what we did. We started searching, and we found the church our first church, or the church that we got to, that we still currently use, right? We use it for, big events, stuff like that. right? Because we have 2 schools now, but we still use the church, and we still donate to the church. So in a way, you're giving back to the community that way. You give it to the church, they take the money and they do what they want to do with it, so forth and so on. Okay, so, but that's the next step, because you got to get indoors, especially if you're up north, right? The snow's coming, the cold's coming, nobody wants to train out in the cold. Now, this is where commitment comes into play, okay? Once when you go from the park to the church, you really got to start thinking about commitment, because you're now starting to invest more time into this. So commitment is a big piece, okay? You got to be committed. Now, I'm going to explain to you what we had to do. We were in the church, in the parish hall, and depending on the day, depending on which floor we were on. So, we had mats, and we stored the mats at the church, and they let us do that, and it was a sweet deal that we had. And you can find them in your neighborhood. You just, again, you got to be a person of character. People want to look at you and talk to you and be like, you're a cool guy. All right, let's do this. Let's make a deal. But if you come across shady, or if they're judging your character, because they'll get the goosebumps on the back of their neck, then you're not going to be able to find these little sweet deals. Okay? So they're out there. You just got to look for them, and you got to be patient with it, and you have to make sure that your character is on par. And your trust is on par, because this is really the beginning of building a relationship. Your first landlord will be a church, will be a hall of some kind. That's your first landlord when you think about it. My first landlord that I had before I got to my first school and my second school was the church. So I started paying rent at the church. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't that much, but at the time when I had nothing but the shirt off my back and a few students, it was a lot, right? So they were my first landlord, and you have to build a strong relationship with your landlord no matter what. Okay. Now, as time goes on, and I'll talk about my experience I had with my other schools and my landlord then, which were rough. But through my experiences at the church, I learned how to do all that. Now, we'll get into all that stuff at the church with all the different types of people that were there and how difficult it was for me, because I was the new guy at the church. So anyways, I found we found the church, and I made the call. We spoke to the head people in charge, and they're like, yeah, sure, no problem, we can do, let's work something out, come on down. So we had the meeting, we worked out a deal, and we were in. And I started teaching 3 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 nights a week. Now, like I said before, once when you get into this space, commitment. You got to make the commitment. If you're going to do it, you got to do it. If you're not going to do it, then stay at the park, or do it, or do it once a week or whatnot. So you need to know what you want, because I'll tell you this, I had my old partner who we paired up, and he didn't see the same vision that I saw. I saw 2 schools, 3 schools, the whole 9 yards, building an empire. I still see that in my head, helping as many people as possible with fitness and martial arts and defense and fighting and being a positive influence. I saw that all in my head. He just saw, hey, you know what? This cool little side gig. Make a little extra money on the side, a couple days a week, and that was it. So something that's very important is, in the beginning, do not, if I learn from my mistake, do not have partners. I'm going to say that again. Do not have a partner. Because a partner, they're not on the same page as you. That's a problem. All of a sudden, you can't steer your ship anymore. You got to go through the other guy, and the other guy might be like, well, I don't want to do that, right? And now you're not sailing as smoothly as possible. Now, I'm not saying don't have a team. You can have a team, but you're the boss. You're the head guy on top. You can respect your team, and you get everybody's opinion on that team, and the team can collaborate and work together, and you come to a decisive decision, right? But the team is all on the same page that you're on. Okay, it's very, very important to understand that you can have a team, but you're the head guy, you're the head boss, right? The buck stops with you, as they say. Now, you have to have that. Okay, don't make that mistake that I made. Don't have a partner. Don't get a partner early in this stage of the game. Don't get a partner. You have team, you have people, you have people working with you, working under you, working beside you, however you want to put it. But no partners. Okay, and there will be people who will want to help because they want to be a part of the journey. They may not want so much to be a part of the responsibility and the headaches that you have, but they want to be a part of the journey. And that's happened. And it still continues to happen to this day. Okay? So, no partners. Okay? Now, we understand that. No partners. Boom. All of a sudden, now you are in charge. Right? So, me and my partner, we finally split. Poof. Get that out of the way. We split, went our separate ways with the handshake, and that was it. You know, and it wasn't, it wasn't any animosity, it wasn't any, we're still friendly, we're still on friendly terms. When we see each other, we say how we doing, the whole 9 yards, but it just didn't work out, and that's okay. But you need to understand that if you are truly committed, I was truly committed to driving this. You can't have anybody on your ship or on your bus that's kind of like, I could see this as a sidekick, because that's only going to slow you down. That's only going to take your wind, right? That's just going to put the brakes on. No brakes, right? Your foot should be on the gas, and you're running through everything. Your sails should be up, and you're heading, to your destination, going through storms and the whole 9 yards, because they will come. Okay? So we understand that. You don't want any partners. But now, when we're in that church, when we're doing the thing, you've got to have the commitment. Because if you're now going in there commitment, once when the word of talk starts to happen, okay, and people start talking, yeah, this guy's really cool, he's starting his business, he was in a park, but now he's in a church, you got to come down, check it out, it's actually really cool, he's doing a great job, people will start to come. Slowly. Now, this is where it gets important to understand. People will come slowly. And what I mean by slowly, I mean slow. The beginning of a business is always the hardest. Now, remember what I started talking about with my old instructor when he said, that he was established and it's easy for me to do what I'm doing because he's established? There's truth to that, right? I was establishing myself, and that was a struggle. I spent 5 years at a church. 5 years. My first 5 years of business, I spent at a church. Now, I had to carry those mats. We had mats, wrestling, the whole 9 yards, up and down between 4 and 8 flights of stairs almost every day. Well, in the beginning, it was 3 times a week, but then we started adding more classes. So soon I started teaching at the church 5 days a week. Okay, so I got to the point where it was every day, and that was exhausting. That's why you gotta commit and recommit, and then commit and recommit to what you're doing, because when the hard hits and you realize that you're putting in more effort for a small return, that's when the real challenge begins. And that's what you have to understand. Okay, you have to keep your dream alive, your vision alive, and you got to keep pushing forward, because in the beginning there will be a small return because nobody knows you. That thought of being, oh, I'm going to be awesome and this and that and the other thing. That does not happen because I had that same thought. Because under my old instructor, my classes were packed. They were packed, right? And that's what I thought. I thought that I would open up my own shop and my classes would be packed like that. No, that's not the farthest thing from the truth. In the beginning, it is hard struggle. You have to drive and drive and drive and drive and drive some more in the beginning, because the difficult part is you want to get to that first school, but you don't have the money. I didn't have the money. When I finally got my opportunity to open up the first school, you know what happened? I sunk everything that I saved. And we're going to talk about this. I sunk everything that I saved from my students that I had saved away, and I put everything into my first school. And I put all my eggs into one basket, and I made sure that school worked. There was no other way to go. It was either do it, either swim or sink. Sink or swim. Okay, and we'll be talking about that. But again, I want to get you guys wrapped around what? You got to have that commitment. You got to be able to commit to what you're about to do, because the hard that hits at this stage is ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. Starting a business with no money, in a park, with the shirt off your back, right? Building your reputation, okay? Leaving a place where I was packed to nothing, and then having to start that up and basically start turning the pot, my own mixture, my own success, and I'm stirring that pot to try and get that going. That is not easy. That is stupid hard. And you need to have that commitment. You need to commit and recommit every day, and you need to keep going until you get to your destination. Now, I remember my right-hand man, Aaron, who's still with me. He runs the New Hyde Park School. Right, I run the Flow Park School. I used to say to him every day, we'll quit tomorrow. We'll quit tomorrow. We'll quit tomorrow. And he realized that was just my way of dealing with the struggles and the upsetment and just, trying to get through this. And I was quitting tomorrow for 5 years. And this is where I was beginning to learn that retention, keeping your students, is everything, right? My first year into the second year, I enrolled, I think like 5 people, maybe 6 people in 1 year. That was it. Think about that for a minute. I enrolled like 6 people in 1 year. That was it. It was horrible. I can't tell you how many times I almost went out of business in the beginning. This is why a lot of times companies, they don't make it trying to start up. Okay, so it's you have to do everything you can, and we're gonna go into all that. What you need to do, how you need to do it. But before we go into that, it's all about understanding that you need what? Commitment. You got to make that decision. If you're going to do this, you do it until you succeed. Period and finish. And that success, whatever that may be for you, is there. That's what it is. That's what you're going to shoot for. Okay? Because the amount of work it takes to do this is just, or any business is just ridiculous, okay? And the funny thing is, a lot of people think the martial art business is simple. Oh yeah, just run some great classes and people show up and you're good to go. No, not at all. Any person will tell you who runs a business will tell you that teaching the classes, the martial art business anyway, teaching the classes is the easiest part of the day. Easiest part of the day. That's when like the headaches go away, kind of a thing. Okay? When you're teaching your class, all of a sudden, oh, my headache's gone because you're having fun. But that's not the business. That's not the business. Okay? There's more to it than that. And it's like going to a restaurant and saying, well, I just got to cook great food and people will come. No. That's why a lot of restaurants probably go out of business, because there's more to it than just cooking and catering and all that stuff. There's more to it than that. So you got to have that commitment, okay? So have that commitment, okay? Because when you get into this next step, into this second stage of the process, right? So the first stage is what? We're really in the first stage, essentially. But if you like break it down, you have the park, right? That was the park. I'm like, I got some students. I was getting on a little momentum. I'm like, all right, I'm doing good. Let me jump into the second piece, which is what? I found a place, a church, okay? You want to find a place that is cheap, okay? Because remember, you got to pay rent. And, I was only charging $125 a month. Like, that was ridiculous. But it got people in the door. That's what I wanted. So you have to know and like what stage of the business you're in. Remember, when you're first starting out, you are what? You're trying to get interest. You're trying to get known. You're trying to get out there, right? That's important. So this is all part of this. So when you do this, you got to make that commitment. When you do any business, you got to make the commitment. Now, I'm going to tell you something. And this is important. So stop what you're doing and come over here. This is important. Because this will derail you. It almost derailed me. The amount of people that will start putting you down, the amount of people that won't believe in you, the amount of people that will tell you that you're gonna fail is astronomical. Always remember something. There are more people trying to knock you off your path to success than people actually cheering you on. If you're lucky, you might have a handful of people, if you're lucky. I had one. Other people started to put me down, told me I was out of my mind, told me I was crazy, told me that I wasn't gonna make it. Some hair scheme, stupid idea, trying to get paid to play karate or whatever. And that is going to happen a lot. So you need that commitment to what? You need that commitment to get through that, because it will continue. And you know what? I have 2 schools. And guess what? It still continues. Just in different areas. People will tell you that you're doing it wrong, or this, that, and the other thing. But what's hilarious is that those same people aren't doing anything. They're not successful. They're not trying to start their own business, but they have the advice to tell you that you're doing it wrong, but they're not doing it. So you have to make sure that you take this in all perspective, okay? Because if you have somebody who is more successful in your area of expertise, and they come to you and say, look, dude, you're kind of doing it wrong, do it like this. Well, then listen to him, because he's done it. But if you got people who aren't doing anything, and you're trying to make something of yourself, you're trying to do something, and they're telling you that you're going to fail, don't listen to them. Because they're doing nothing. Okay, so, but all of these things are going to be coming into your brain, and you're going to be getting battled by this over and over and over and over again. So you got to commit and recommit and commit daily, every single day. All right, guys, that's it for today. And Justin here from Kombative Edge Martial Arts, and I'll see you guys next time. And enjoy. Bye-bye.